Hello, you're watching Reddit Confessions. Today's story doesn't begin with names, or dates, or romantic memories. It begins with silence, but not the comforting kind, the kind that screams in your ear. The dishwasher finished its cycle 4 hours ago. I waited, just to see if she'd open it. Not because I needed help. Not because the plates couldn't wait. But because I was desperate, pathetically desperate, for a sign that I wasn't alone in this house with a ghost in a human body. She walked past it 4 times. 4. Each time, her eyes grazed it like it was a stranger she didn't recognize. And I stood in the hallway, out of view, counting footsteps like a man on trial, watching the jury walk by without meeting his gaze. And then, as if summoned by my silence, she said it again. Love must be earned, Dorian. No eye contact. No inflection. Just a sentence dropped like a brick into the ocean of our marriage. That was her favorite line lately. A phrase she wielded like a verdict, not a value. A mantra to justify her emotional absence, her coldness, her growing list of invisible expectations. I didn't respond. I just walked to the kitchen, opened the dishwasher, and began unloading it one plate at a time. Slow, methodical, robotic. I stopped trying that night. No speeches. No slammed doors. No, we need to talk. Just a switch, flipped quietly. No more surprise breakfast on Sundays. No more texting her good luck before meetings. No more waiting up just to hear how her yoga class went. You want love to be earned? Fine. Let's see what it feels like when no one's playing the game anymore. And something strange happened. She started smiling more. Not because she was happy, because she was nervous. She started making conversation at dinner. She even mentioned a meme she saw, something she hadn't done in months. I nodded, fork in hand, and said nothing. It wasn't revenge. It was a mirror. And for the first time in years, she looked into it. This isn't the story of a dramatic breakup. This is the story of a slow-motion unraveling, of a man who disappeared without packing a bag, while she stood still, waiting for applause that never came. And if you think you've heard stories like this before. She started setting the table again. It was subtle at first, one fork placed where mine usually went, then 2 glasses instead of 1, as if she were slowly remembering that I existed. But I didn't say anything. I just sat down when the food was ready, thanked her like I would a stranger, and ate in silence. I didn't reach for her hand like I used to. I didn't ask about her day. I didn't offer the usual joke to break the tension. Because tension had become our new wallpaper, and she'd hung it herself. You know what's terrifying? Watching someone realize they're losing you and not knowing how to stop it. She started wearing makeup again, subtle, just enough that I noticed but she could pretend it was casual. She started complimenting my shirts. She even laughed, too loudly, when I muttered something under my breath about the dog next door barking like it was being auditioned for a horror movie. And yet, every time she looked at me, her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I think that's when it started dawning on her, I wasn't angry. I was done. One night, I came home from a late shift and found her in the kitchen, staring at her phone like she was bracing for impact. I asked, softly, waiting for someone. She flinched like the question was a slap. No, she said too quickly. Just scrolling. I nodded and walked past her. What I didn't say. I knew. I'd known for weeks. There were little signs, tiny cracks that, when you stepped back, formed a pattern. The too frequent smiles when her phone lit up. The sudden changes in her music playlists. The deleted call logs. But I hadn't confronted her. I didn't need to. Because this wasn't about revenge or confrontation. This was about letting her live in the mess she created. One night, she left her phone unlocked on the nightstand. I didn't go looking for it. But when a message popped up that read, "So, when are you telling him?" I didn't even blink. I just turned over and went to sleep. And in the morning, I made her coffee. Just the way she liked it. With cinnamon on top. She blinked like she didn't know whether to feel guilty or grateful. "Thanks," she mumbled, eyes darting like a kid caught stealing. That was the morning she began to spiral. She started asking me random questions. "Are you happy? Is work okay? Are you seeing anyone from the office?" The irony would have made me laugh if I still had the energy to laugh. She was asking me if I was the one drifting away, when I had spent the last 2 years fighting for a place in her heart she'd already rented out to someone else. I didn't answer her questions. I just gave her more silence. The kind that wraps around your ankles and pulls you under, slowly. The kind of silence that says, "You had your chance." She told me once that relationships are like gardens, you get what you water. I remember nodding then, thinking she was just being poetic. Now I realize she had been watering something else entirely, and only just now noticed the weeds growing around us. By the end of that week, she cooked 3 times. She even bought wine. She tried to recreate the date night we used to have every third Thursday. And I went along with it. I sat across from her, I sipped the same wine, I even let her talk about that movie she used to love that I always secretly hated. But I never asked her to explain the message. She was waiting for it, praying for it, maybe. Hoping I'd scream, accuse, cry, care. But when you've begged someone to love you for years and they hand you conditional affection in return, there comes a point where the fight leaves your body. And that's what terrified her the most. She wanted the old me back, the one who tried. But she forgot that once a man gives up quietly, he doesn't make announcements. He just starts walking. And the scariest part? She couldn't tell if I had already left. It happened on a Monday night, cold, wet, and unnervingly quiet. I was upstairs folding laundry, watching the static build in a pair of her gym leggings I hadn't seen her wear in weeks, when I heard a knock at the front door. Not a polite tap. Not a neighbor's rhythm. It was sharp. Urgent. The kind of knock that makes the back of your neck tighten. Clarabelle wasn't home. She said she was staying late to prepare for some internal meeting the next morning. I wasn't keeping track anymore, and maybe that's why I opened the door without hesitation. But what I saw on the porch changed everything. It was a delivery guy, barely 20, standing in the rain, holding a bouquet of red and white roses and a bottle of that same $90 Cabernet she pretended to hate because I liked it. This for Clarabelle, he said, reading the name off the printout. I blinked. She's not here. He shrugged and handed it to me. Paid in advance. Said it was for tonight. The card was taped to the neck of the wine bottle. No envelope. Just a small white square with messy handwriting. For later, wear that dress I like. You'll be unforgettable. T. I stood in the doorway for a long time after the kid left. Holding those flowers like they were made of ash. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just walked into the kitchen, placed the bouquet gently in the trash, and set the wine on the counter. Unopened. When Clarabelle came home around 11, her hair looked too perfect to have been working late. Her makeup was fresh, not faded. I was sitting at the table, still wearing the same hoodie I'd been in all day. She glanced at the counter and froze. She didn't even ask how the bottle got there. Didn't pretend. She just stared at it like it might start talking. Long day? I asked, without looking up. She hesitated. Yeah. You know. Just prepping. Internal meeting. She cleared her throat. Yeah. I nodded slowly and stood up, brushing past her as I went to the sink. You forgot your flowers. She turned. Her eyes scanned the kitchen until they landed on the trash can. Her jaw twitched. For a full minute, she said nothing. And neither did I. That was the first time I saw it, fear. Not guilt. Not regret. Pure, unfiltered fear. And yet, I didn't confront her. I didn't ask who T was. Because I didn't care about his name. I cared about how easily she had reduced me to furniture in my own home. The next morning, the wine was gone from the counter. No explanation. No apology. Just gone. Like the years I gave her. Vanished overnight. But that wasn't the end. 3 days later, I got an email. An anonymous account. No subject line. Just a message with 5 photos attached. Blurry. Grainy. But clear enough to recognize her. And him. The last photo was outside a hotel lobby. Her dress. The same green one I bought her 3 anniversaries ago. The one she said made her feel too seen. I guess it didn't bother her anymore. The man, tall, confident, wearing the kind of smile that only belongs to someone who thinks he's untouchable, had his hand on the small of her back like he owned it. And maybe, in her eyes, he did. I didn't respond to the email. I didn't save the photos. I deleted everything. Because what mattered wasn't whether she was sleeping with someone else. What mattered was that I already knew. Long before proof arrived. Long before the flowers. Long before the knock at the door. She told me, in 1,000 ways. With her eyes. Her silence. Her sudden absence behind walls she never let me rebuild. And now. Now she'd have to watch me do what she never expected. Disappear, right in front of her. Exactly 7 years ago, to the day, I proposed to her. It was raining then, too. We were standing on an old pedestrian bridge overlooking the city where we met. She didn't even wait for me to finish my sentence, she just said yes and laughed like I had offered her something rare, like joy. That laugh. I hadn't heard it in years. Not sincerely. Not without conditions. Not without performance. This year, our anniversary passed like any other day. No card. No happy anniversary text. Not even a look. She got ready for work in silence, hummed some pop song while curling her hair, and left with the same distracted energy she wore like perfume. I stayed home. Took the day off. Not because I was feeling sentimental, God no, but because I wanted to remember who I had been when I gave her that ring. Who I thought she was. And I needed to see clearly how far we'd both drifted from that moment. Around noon, I opened an old memory box. Buried in the back of the closet, under a pile of winter coats and things we said we'd use next season. Inside was a Polaroid of us in the early days, laughing in our first apartment. She had a mustard stain on her shirt, and I had crooked glasses. We looked stupidly happy. Like kids trying on adulthood. I stared at it for too long. Later that evening, she came home early. Not early like thoughtful, but early like nervous. Her face looked tight, her smile forced. She stood in the doorway for a beat too long before she said, "I thought maybe we could order in tonight." Thai. It was the first time in months she'd suggested something we used to enjoy together. I nodded. Sure. We ate on the couch, in front of the TV. She kept glancing at me when she thought I wasn't looking. I think she was trying to read me, trying to figure out what I knew and what I didn't. But I didn't give her anything to grab onto. No questions. No attitude. I was polite, distant, and entirely unreadable. That's when she snapped. Mid-chew, she dropped her fork and said, "Why are you being so quiet lately? You think you're punishing me by being cold?" I didn't flinch. You once said love must be earned. I guess I just stopped trying. Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, and for the first time in a long time, she looked scared. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't accusing. I wasn't crying. I was calm. Detached. That terrified her more than any tantrum ever could. I didn't mean, she started, fumbling. You did, I said. You meant it. And I heard you. The room fell silent except for the low hum of the TV. Then came the second wave. I messed up, she said, and her voice cracked just enough to make me wonder if it was rehearsed. I didn't think you'd stop caring. I thought that I'd chase you. I said. She nodded slowly, lips trembling. You wanted to feel valuable by making me feel worthless, I continued. And now you're upset because I finally agreed with you. Tears welled up in her eyes. Real or not, I didn't care anymore. I was lonely, she whispered. So was I replied. For years. But I didn't run. She reached for my hand across the couch, but I stood before she could touch me. You're just scared, I said. Because for the first time, I'm not performing. And now you're realizing the stage is empty. She didn't follow me when I walked upstairs. Didn't knock on the door. Didn't send an apology text later like she had in the past. She just sat there in the dim light of the living room, in the ruins of her own theater, surrounded by the echo of a man she used to have, for free, before she demanded he prove his worth. And now? Now she had to earn the silence. It had been 2 weeks since the night she cracked. Since the silence between us stopped being awkward and started being dangerous. She walked on eggshells now, like the floor might collapse if she stepped in the wrong place. Her cheerful tone in the mornings was too rehearsed. Her laughter too sharp at dinner. She was trying, desperately, but not for love. For control. To fix the image. To undo a shift she couldn't quite understand. But by then, I was already far ahead. I had written the letter months ago. Folded it neatly, sealed it without signing my name, and hid it inside one of my old hardcover books. Clarabelle never read anything without a screen, so I thought it was safe. It wasn't a love letter, not really. It was more like a will. Not for my life, but for my marriage. A document that laid everything bare. What she did. What I knew. How I stayed long after I should have left. How every "I love you" from her felt more like a receipt than a promise. The letter had no plan. No threats. No timeline. It was just the raw, ugly version of the thoughts I never said out loud. Words I knew she'd never be ready for if I delivered them in person. Words I didn't want to say. Because by the time I wrote it, I was tired of hearing my own pain out loud. And yet somehow, she found it. I came home from work early, unusual for me. I hadn't told her I was cutting the day short. I just needed to breathe somewhere that didn't smell like coffee and pity. As I stepped into the house, the air felt off. Still. Thick. Too quiet. Then I heard it. Pages. Shuffling. Rapid and clumsy. From the upstairs hallway. When I turned the corner into the bedroom, there she was, sitting on the edge of the bed, the letter unfolded in her shaking hands. Her cheeks were pale, her lips parted. The envelope lay beside her like a dead thing. For a full minute, she didn't notice me standing there. She just kept reading. And rereading. When she finally looked up, her eyes weren't angry. They weren't defensive. They were destroyed. You weren't going to tell me, she said. Her voice was small. Like a child's. No, I replied. Because it was never meant for you to read. It was for me. She flinched, and I realized how much power is in indifference. She had hurt me 1,000 ways, and I had absorbed it all. Quietly. Patiently. But now, my detachment was louder than any accusation. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't comfort her. I just stood still. You said I made you feel invisible, she whispered. You did, I said. For years. I didn't know. Yes, you did, I cut in. You just didn't care. Not until it started costing you something. She put the letter down carefully, as if it were a bomb. You talk about me like I'm a monster. You talk about love like it's a job interview, I said. Like I'm supposed to keep proving I deserve it. But I already did. Every damn day. You just stopped noticing. We sat in silence, the letter between us like a courtroom exhibit. She didn't move. I think she wanted to, but didn't know if she had the right anymore. I was lonely, she said again, like a mantra she kept hoping would excuse everything. I begged for your attention, I said, and you gave it to your phone. To your reflection. To someone who thought he could compete with the man who was still choosing you. She sobbed then. Not quietly. It was messy. Loud. But it didn't move me. I didn't feel cruel, I felt exhausted. She looked up through her tears. Do you hate me? I shook my head slowly. No. I just don't know who you are anymore. And I don't think you know either. That night, she didn't sleep in our bed. She stayed downstairs. I heard her pacing until 3 a.m., then the soft creak of the couch springs as she finally collapsed into silence. But I couldn't sleep either. Because I knew what was coming next. And so did she. This wasn't the end of a fight. This was the start of a reckoning. The next few days passed like a quiet funeral. No one said anything direct, but everything spoke. The sound of her slippers on the floor in the morning, slower than usual. The way she started knocking before entering the bedroom we used to share. Her phone was now face up on the counter, always in view, as if that could erase what had already happened. Then Thursday came, and with it, a new performance. I came home late from work. Traffic had been brutal, and I'd spent the last 30 minutes in bumper-to-bumper silence, rehearsing what I'd say if she tried to cry again. But when I stepped into the house, I didn't find tears. I found dinner. Candles. Napkins folded with almost comical precision. Steak. Roasted vegetables. My favorite wine, opened and breathing, like this was some elegant date night that hadn't been earned in years. And her. She stood at the table, in a dress I hadn't seen in ages. The one from our honeymoon dinner in Savannah. She wore it like armor now. Like she was trying to drag the past forward and wear it like a disguise. Happy Thursday, she said softly. I blinked. What is this? A restart, she said. If you'll let it be. I sat down, because I was too stunned not to. My body moved without permission. The smell of rosemary chicken, her backup plan for when steak didn't work, tugged at some distant, tired part of me that remembered what it was like to feel wanted. Or at least seen. She poured the wine and slid my plate forward. I stared at the food like it had something to say. I read the letter again, she said, not looking at me. It was like reading an obituary I hadn't realized I wrote. I said nothing. I can't go back and fix what I did, she continued, but I can show up differently. I want to earn back. Stop, I cut in, gently but firmly. Don't say you want to earn back anything. You said love had to be earned, and I believed you. But you moved the goalposts every time I tried. You turned affection into a transaction. She looked down, biting her lip. I pushed my plate away. This dinner, I said. It's nice. Really. But it's not for me. It's for you. It's your way of trying to reset the scoreboard. That's not fair. Isn't it? I interrupted. This whole marriage has been one long scoreboard. And I kept losing. Her hands shook slightly as she held her wineglass. She didn't drink from it. Then came the real moment. I ended it, she whispered. With him. Weeks ago. I looked up. She nodded. Before I read the letter. I didn't know how to tell you. I was scared. Of what you'd say. Of what I'd become. And what did you become? I asked. Her throat moved as she swallowed. A stranger to myself. There it was. The first honest thing she'd said in months. Maybe years. She stood up, walked to the window, and stared out into the dark. Her back was to me when she said, "Do you still love me?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I had too many. I loved the version of her who used to fall asleep on my chest during thunderstorms. The one who surprised me with a pizza on my birthday because she remembered I hated cake. I loved the girl in the mustard-stained t-shirt and the woman who once swore that no one else made her feel safe. But that version was gone. And now, sitting in front of rosemary chicken and red wine and a desperate attempt to rewind time, I realized she was trying to rebuild something with blueprints she never understood. I stood up. I need to get some air. She turned quickly, panic in her eyes. Are you coming back? I don't know, I said. But if I do, it won't be for steak and candles. It'll be for honesty. Then I walked out the door. No jacket. No phone. Just the cool night air and the sound of her breath catching behind me. The door closed. And behind it, everything she thought she could fix with dinner, began to rot. I didn't come home that night. I didn't even mean for it to be some dramatic statement, I just kept walking. Past the park where we used to take our dog before she gave him away because he was too much work. Past the corner store where I once bought her a pint of mint chip ice cream at 2 a.m., because she had a dream about it. Past all the ghosts of who we used to be. I ended up at a cheap motel 2 towns over, the kind where no one asks questions and every room smells faintly like bleach and regret. I laid on the bed, fully clothed, shoes still on, and stared at the ceiling. The fan above made this soft clicking sound with every rotation, like a clock running out of time. I didn't cry. I didn't sleep. I just existed. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel trapped in that stillness. In the morning, there were 7 missed calls. 4 texts. All from her. Please come home. I didn't sleep. I made a mistake. I know that now. We can talk. Please. Just come home. I can't lose you too. That last one stuck with me. Too. As if someone else had already left her, and she was just now realizing the second exit was underway. I didn't reply. I turned off my phone and sat in the motel diner alone, drinking bad coffee and thinking about all the times I had to beg her to look at me while I was speaking. Now she was the one begging for attention. Life has a strange way of turning tables, doesn't it? I went back home late that night, half expecting her to be asleep on the couch or curled up at the kitchen table, but she was awake. Wide-eyed, pale, like she hadn't eaten in days. The minute she saw me, she stood, like her body had forgotten how to stay still. I need to tell you something, she said before I could even set my keys down. I walked past her, poured myself a glass of water, and waited. She followed me into the kitchen, clutching the back of a chair like she might collapse without it. I wasn't in love with him, she blurted. I know you think I was. I know the photos, the messages, they all looked like something serious, but it wasn't. It was stupid. Shallow. I was chasing validation. Not love. I said nothing. Just sipped the water slowly. He made me feel wanted. Not because I needed him. But because I couldn't handle how invisible I felt in my own skin. You were always so, together. So solid. And I felt like I was melting from the inside out. I raised an eyebrow. So you cheated to punish your own reflection? She winced. I don't expect you to understand. You're right, I said coldly. I don't. Silence again. This thick, painful tension between us. She stepped closer. I didn't move. I didn't realize how far I had gone until you stopped chasing me. You always chased. You always forgave. Even when I didn't deserve it. I thought you'd never leave, and when you did, even just for one night, it hit me. What hit you? I asked. She stared at me with hollow eyes. That you were never the one who needed to earn love. I was. The words felt like a punch in the dark. Not because they were loud, but because they were too late. They would have meant everything 2 years ago. Even 1 year ago. But now? Now they were a confession to a crime whose statute of limitations had already expired in my heart. Thank you, I said softly. For saying that. She blinked, confused. That's it? What else is there? I asked. I waited for you to see me. I begged, silently, for years. And now, when I finally found the strength to stop asking, you notice? You only see me when I'm halfway out the door. Tears welled in her eyes, and this time, she didn't try to stop them. They fell quietly, slowly. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. I nodded. That's the first honest thing you've said in a long time. She reached for my hand, and I didn't pull away. I let her hold it. Not because I forgave her. But because I needed to remember what it felt like to offer comfort, and not feel desperate for it in return. We stood there for a long moment, two people who built a house of love on a cracked foundation. One held a match. The other held water. And for the first time, neither of us knew which we wanted more. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the window in a way that felt almost staged, too bright, too gentle, like the universe was daring us to pretend everything was okay. Clarabelle was already awake. She sat at the edge of the bed, wrapped in the blanket-like armor, clutching a mug that had long gone cold. We didn't say much at first. No grand speeches. No dramatic music in the background. Just two people sitting in the aftermath of years of emotional war. I don't want to live like this anymore, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I know, I replied. Neither do I. I want to go to therapy, she added. Alone. And maybe, eventually, with you. But I need to fix whatever made me sabotage the best thing that ever happened to me. I looked at her for a long time. Not searching for lies, just weighing whether I believed the effort behind those words. And for once, I didn't feel the urge to doubt her. I just felt tired. But not the hopeless kind of tired. The kind you feel when the rain finally stops, and you realize you've survived the storm. I'm not promising anything, I said. But I'll stay. For now. Not for you. For the version of me that still believes people can change. She nodded, tears spilling silently. We spent the day in silence, but it was different now. Not a silence of resentment, but of recovery. She cooked again, but without the candles or dress-up. Just grilled cheese and tomato soup, simple. Honest. We ate on the couch. No performance. No pressure. And for the first time in what felt like years, we laughed. Really laughed. Over something stupid on TV. It didn't erase the past. It didn't rebuild trust. But it cracked a window open. Enough to let the air in. Weeks passed. Then months. She kept her word, therapy, boundaries, hard conversations. I didn't rush to forgive. I didn't erase my pain. But I watched her show up, not as the woman she had been, but as the one she wanted to become. We're still together. Not perfectly. But intentionally. And I'm no longer the man begging for affection. I'm a man who finally understands that love given freely should be cherished, not challenged. Some days, we still fall into old habits. But now, we catch ourselves. And we talk. And most importantly, we see each other. And that's more than I ever thought we'd get back. What moment in this story resonated with you most? Have you ever forgiven someone who didn't expect it, and did it change you? Let us know in the comments below, and if you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like and subscribe to Reddit Confessions. We share real stories that make you think, feel, and remember what it means to be human.